screen. Welcome to the Honorable Mr. Artem Dankanich, as a PhD in Philosophy of Associate Professor of Department of Philosophy. And for the topic today is free will and moral responsibility in the light of neuroscience. And for today's session is being live streamed on the University of STEKOM YouTube channel. I will lead our agenda this afternoon. First, we will start class presentation delivered by Dr. Artem and continue with the Q&A session. In the next session, we have time for documentation and last time is closing. Okay, let's begin. We will start class delivered by Mr. Artem. The time is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Novita, for hospitality and for that enterprise for today. So I also like to thank Dmitry Malihov for such a possibility and option. So today's topic is dedicated to the most controversial, I would say, issue ever. What is free will, and what does it mean to be free? And what is free will and moral responsibility in the light of neuroscience. And this topic is extremely important just because we live in the age of neuroscience and cognitive science. We are witnesses of the rapid development of cognitive neuroscience as a theory of artificial intelligence and data technologies these days. And apparently humanity is in anticipation of the impressive fruits of progress, even though there are some critical remarks concerning AI developments. However, now more than ever, we are close to solving the mystery of brain and consciousness, and to the most fundamental philosophical issue ever. What does it mean to be free? And what does it mean to live freely? And what is deliverance as well? So what does it all mean, especially these days, in the light of contemporary progress? So, and I'm challenging you and I'm challenging myself today in order to understand this issue from different perspectives. Of course, it is possible, and we do believe that. Okay, so to begin with, what is free will? What is free will? And I'm focusing on this topic just because in academic cycles, so many debates on this matter. And there has been many speculation and endless discussion about the nature of free will. So, and as you can see, the question of will has occupied an important place in Western thought, in philosophy, psychology, neuroscience, theory of artificial intelligence. And this idea of free will is basically connected and is up to the following ideas of God, soul, justice, reward, punishment, whatever it may be. So if there is no free will, there is no reward, there is no punishment, there is no, moral responsibility. As you can see, this notion, the notion of free will is closely related to that concepts as well. So not only a so-called free will is important, but the idea of free will is not, as you can see, is not free in this respect, just because every time we're talking about free will, we have to keep in mind an idea, the following ideas, an idea of God, soul, justice, etc. So free will, as you can see, implies a will independent of conditions. So free will, from this perspective, is a way of doing something independently, and doing in the way of you want, of personal, from this personal approach. To do what do you want. So, and this idea is so, important to the Western world and to the world and to the global world as well. If there is no freedom there is no freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of political, activity. How that could be? How of these things could be? So, and I would like to challenge you asking by that. Okay, so the concept of the nature of free will is studied by religion, theology to be specific, so to speak, philosophy, and science, neuroscience and cognitive science. What does it all mean? We see, you can see here, the first possible option and the first idea of moral responsibility, free will, and neuroscience, and it is called self-determinism. So self-determinism is an idea that we can reconcile an idea of free will and free actions and with idea of determinism. And you can see here compatibilism is a thesis that free will is compatible with determinism, because free will is typically taken to be a necessary condition of moral responsibility. Compatibilism is sometimes expressed as a thesis about the compatibility between moral responsibility and determinism. Semi-compatibilism is the idea that moral responsibility is compatible with determinism. So, the whole approach is called self-determinism. I guess you get this idea as well, that we can be free and we can reconcile this freedom or deliverance or whatever it may be, or freedom of actions, freedom of speech, with determinism from natural sciences, and with determinism from a social perspective. So we can reconcile ourselves with all of these ideas. We are compatible to live freely, to take all of this stuff easily, and to work, yes. Just because, so an idea of work here is closely related to social implications of determinism. Okay, it is called soft determinism. Soft determinism is widely found in religion, philosophy, and neuroscience. Okay, so free will, as you can see, implies idea of reconciliation with determinism from this particular perspective. Okay, another point is called hard determinism. According to this theory, there's no even option of reconciliation between free will and determinism. Why, you could ask? The possible answer is hard incompatibilism. This is the view that both determinism and indeterminism are incompatible with having free will and moral responsibility. It means that we are determined, we are predestinated, or we are doomed to live, but our life is beyond the notion of freedom or deliverance, as you wish. So, according to hard determinism, we don't have even a little chance, a little possibility to live freely, to live on our own. The next point is called illusionism. So free will is an illusion. There is no place for moral responsibility. Some illusionists states that we should reverse moral responsibility in society by maintaining the illusion. Free will is a very good concept, they say, just because this concept is useful enough to control masses, to manipulate sometimes, in order to reach political goals or economic goals or whatever it may be. So illusionism is an idea that free will is not compatible with our brain, in fact, with our reason, with our body, with our nature. Free will is an illusion, but we don't need this illusion in order to live in this world and to interact, of course. So interaction in politics, in education, in religion, in economics, in international relation is an extremely important idea. So free will, from this perspective, is a subfield of social mean. So free will is a social mean, it's a political mean from this perspective. All right, so the next point is indeterminism. So what is indeterminism? Indeterminism is an idea that free will is a realm, a very specific realm, and we have to be free. Indeterminism is presented by soft causality, event causal libertarianism, non-causality, and libertarianism. So what does it all mean? Soft causality is a causality we have in the physical world. It includes occasional quantum events, which are only probabilistic and statistical. This means that they are not strictly caused by prior events. Also, they may be causes of subsequent events. Soft causality, as you can see, is quite different from the classical determinism. Classical determinism is based on idea and is apt to the following idea that we live in the world of antecedent or prior events. There is no event without prior event. There is no, cause without prior cause or causality. The next one is called event causal libertarianism. And here you can see that this approach appeals to idea of agent settling of whether certain states of affairs obtained on a particular occasion can be reduced to the causing of events of bodily emotions coming to a resolution by certain mental events or states, and such as certain desires, beliefs, or intentions. As you can see, event causal libertarianism is closely related to that idea of a very specific mental events. What is non-causality? It is a variation of agent causality. The idea that agents can start new causal chains that are not predetermined by the events of the immediate or distant past and the physical laws of nature. It means that there is no causality, no determinism, no pre-established harmony, no predeterminism, and predestination as well. And the last one is libertarianism. Free will is incompatible with causal determinism, and agents have free will. According to this viewpoint on free will, we are doomed to be free. There is no causality, there is no determinism. All we have to do is to live freely, is to live happily, is to live, to live happily, yeah. Just because liberty means absolute freedom, freedom of actions, freedom of thought, and freedom of desires as well. Indeterminism. And I would also like to make some clarification here about fatalism and determinism. Fatalism is, as you can see, is widely known how philosophical, how religious idea, but fatalism is quite different from determinism. Determinism is an idea that we live in a world of that caused by antecedent events. But fatalism is an idea that every event is predetermined from the above. It is a religious idea, I guess, in many ways and in many respects. But anyway, this idea of fate is predetermined and nothing can be done about that. We can't change this idea. We can't change the events that have been predetermined from the above, by the God, by the blind forces of nature, by the cosmos, whatever it may be. So, but determinism is quite different. Determinism is an idea of dependence, as you can see. My action is caused, is predetermined by the predecessor, by the prior actions. This is the main idea and the main feature of determinism. Fatalism is quite different, as you can see. Okay, but what is neuroscience perspective on free will and moral responsibility? Do we have to reconcile free will, moral responsibility, social contract, politics, religion with breakthrough in neuroscience? As you can see, neuroscience, also known as a neuroscience, is a study of how the nervous system develops, its structure, and what it does. Neuroscientists focus on the brain and how the brain impacts our behavior and cognitive functions. The brain you are carrying around in your head and in my hand as well is far by the most complicated structure known in the universe. And everything you have been and will be arises from the activity of these 3-pound collections of, just imagine, more than 100 billion neurons. It's a very complicated system. It's a very complicated, main of our body, in fact. So the central nervous systems consist of the brain, retina, spinal cord, and if your brain functions well, you can live a long, happy, and productive life, barring some unfortunate circumstances, of course. And if you have a brain disorder, you may struggle to overcome every detail life, a battle that will take place within your brain. So for this reason, we have to keep in mind this idea that healthy brain is a foundation to long and happy life. Here you can see highly influential neuroscientist of the 2 latest decades, I would say. Michael Gazzaniga, Sam Harris, David Chalmers, Lisa Feldman Barrett, Brenda Milner, Susanna Haraplana Hutzel, Joseph Ledoux, and Tony Damashi. So these scholars are widely known within neuroscientists, within cognitive science, and I would like to familiar you with their ideas of moral responsibility, free will, and what we have to do with breakthroughs in neuroscience. Michael Gazzaniga, he's a director of the SAGE Center for the Study of Mind at the University of California, and he is still working Santa Barbara. So in 1964, he received a PhD from the California Institute of Technology, where he worked on the guidance of Roger Sperry. By the way, Roger Sperry is another acclaimed and noted scholar. So with primary and he was working in the field of cognitive science. And according to Michael Zaniga, the issue of free will is quite simple. There is no scientific reason not to hold people accountable and responsible. However, Michael Zaniga points out personal responsibility is not to be found in the brain. Rather, it is a matter of social interaction. It's a very complicated idea, in fact. What does it mean? There is no his statement, his claim that there is no moral responsibility. We can't find moral responsibility within our brains. There is no even neurons that makes us to do moral responsible actions. And this idea is extremely important, especially these days. In concerning the free will concept in general, he summarizes. It is also revealing because it makes clear that the whole arcane issue about free will is a miscast concept based on social and psychological beliefs held at particular times in human history. It means that free will is an illusion. There is no free will in an ordinary sense, in a philosophical sense, or even as in a religious sense. Free will is an illusion, and moral responsibility. Given that fact, moral responsibility is a product of social interaction. This is what moral responsibility from neuroscience perspective. By the way, Michael Gazzaniga is one of the leading experts and scholars within neuroscience discourse. So, and this idea is widely known within neuroscientists that moral responsibility is a pretty much artificial concept. It's a pretty much, I would say, social concept because there is no biological and neurobiological background to that very idea. Okay, the second point is how to think about the very concept of personal responsibility in mechanistic and social world. How can we think about it this way? It is a given that all network systems, social or mechanical, need accountability in order to work. In human societies, this is generally referred to as the members of social group possessing personal responsibility. Now, is personal responsibility a mechanism that resides in the individual brain, or is its existence depend on the presence of social group? A social reason is a mean of social interaction. And we did elaborate this idea of social reason, and we did establish this idea of social reason using morality, using politics, using education, customs, merits, traditions, moral commandments, whatever it may be, just because we have to interact in a very specific social and moral way. Therefore, moral responsibility is a mean of social control. And for this very reason, Michael Gazzaniga argues that moral responsibility is a pretty much artificial idea, and there is no even an option of studying moral responsibility within neuroscience. Okay, the next point is, according to Michael Gazzaniga, brain begets mind. If you are familiar with classical psychology, classical philosophy, and classical theology, mind is something beyond, something beneath brain. Mind is a gift from the above, is a gift from God. But according to neuroscience, there is no even such an option to claim that mind is a gift. No way. Mind is a product of the brain. And according to Gazzaniga, you can here see his passion for that, and I would say research in his institute in California. So, and he did convince in that idea that brain begets mind, and you are extremely distributed and parallel brain with no point of central command. There is no spirit in the mechanism. There is no nothing mysterious that makes up you, that I. The classical idea of soul is found in Plato's and Aristotle's and teachings, and Islam, of course, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism. And that idea is called dualism. We have body and we have a soul. In other words, we have a mind. And these two substances is somehow connected in order to to live, in order to operate in this world. So mind is a part of soul, and mind is a way of operation of our body. And this classical viewpoint on brain, on mind, on soul, on body is found in the ancient philosophy and religions. Anyway, neuroscience is quite opposite to that very idea, because the first, I would say, as the first and foremost, is the following assumption: brain begets mind. So we function automatically, and for this exact reason, Gazzaniga came to the conclusion that there is no free will, because my mind, my brain operates my body, operates my desires, my passions, my emotions, my mental states. For this reason, I'm just a man. I'm to a great extent a puppet. I'm driven by these biological forces, neurobiological forces, in order to live and in order to continue my lifestyle. So as you can see from this perspective, neuroscience is a quite skeptical research and science, just because there is no out of me, there's no out of this world. All we have to do and all we have to keep in mind is the following: we are the blind bodies forced by the blind forces of the brain or the mind, if you wish. And for this exact reason, we function automatically. We perceive sensations, breaths, create new blood cells, etc. We are also in some respects automatic. We form coalitions, share food without kids, etc. And the primary reason for that is our left hemispheric interpreter. And Michael Gazzaniga states that we have a very specific biological man within our left hemispheric, yes, and he called that man interpreter. So therefore, there is no objective world in my, I would say, in my depiction of the world, just because my brain doing many things in order to keep me safe in order to give me force, give me, I would say, motivation to live, but not to think about this world. All I have to do, according to Michael Xanaka, is to select my actions. But this process is based on unconscious neurobiological impulses. All right. Robert Sapolsky, I guess you are familiar with this American scholar. He's an American researcher, also he's widely known YouTuber, and he's a professor of biology. And according to Sapolsky, free will doesn't exist at all. There is no free will because Sapolsky appeals to biological frameworks rejecting free will. And for this exact reason, for this very reason, we are completely dependent on neurons in this sense, and free will is a mess. There's no point to believe that free will is a realm just because neuroscience did discover that dependency from neurons and chemistry of our mind and brain. All we have to do is to push aside and all of these old-fashioned ideas of free will and freedom of thought, etc. We are biological machines, and there is no, I would say, reason to tell us that we are free creatures. This is, I would like to emphasize this idea of Robert Sapolsky, that free will doesn't exist, just because we are up to biological content, and we are completely dependent on neurons in this sense. Okay, Sam Harris. Sam Harris is widely known neuroscientist, philosopher, writer, and creator of Waking Up podcast. According to Sam Harris, free will is an illusion. Our wills are simply not of our own mind. Thoughts, intentions, desires, passions, merits, moral restrictions, what all of these characteristics of the human beings, in fact, are caused by our neurons and our biology, and there is no even option to tell that we are free and we can do everything we really want. So free will is actually more than an illusion. It is more than an illusion. It is interesting, but according to Sam Harris, free will is an illusion. Free will is an option of social mind, but there is no free will within human brain and human mind. So there is no question that most, if not all, mental events are a product of physical events. Mental events like fear, anxiety, depression are products of physical events, according to Sam Harris, of course. The brain is a physical system entirely beholden to the laws of nature, and there is every reason to believe that changes in its functional state and material structure entirely dictate our thoughts and actions. But even if the human mind were made of soul stuff, nothing about my argument would change. The unconscious operations of a soul would grant you no more freedom than the unconscious psychology of your brain does. Once again, whether you believe in consciousness, whether you don't believe in consciousness, There's no reason for you to believe that we are freely somehow or to some extent. So, and the problem here is that free will, as you can see, makes no sense objectively. Even more, he claims, it makes no sense even subjectively. Just imagine, there is no problem with free will. Free will is a completely nonsense, according to Sam Harris. All right, so it makes no sense anymore. But the question here is, what does it mean to take responsibility for an action? Suppose you have a friend. Suppose you have a friend, and your friend, had lost his mind. So, and what is free will in this respect? I would like to give you the following example. My friend, he is one of the greatest musicians I have ever known. But when I saw him the other day, he looked like he was on his last legs. He hardly plays anymore. And the question here is, what made him give up his musical career? Apparently, he lost confidence in himself. He lost, the will to live, the will to create, the will to play. And he has been sick and failing since ever. Now the question arises, what caused these mental states? What caused his behavior? Why did he lost his inspiration, his motivation? Maybe we are talking about personal convictions. What caused him to give up his occupation? Personal convictions, environment, political agenda, neurons. According to determinism, according to neurobiological determinism, or his mental state can be described in the following way. He did give up willingness to create and to live just because of a very specific combination of a very specific, I would say, relation between his neurons. So what does it mean? Does it mean that we have to take responsibility, or does it mean that is there such an option to take decisive action in a very specific situations? Do we have to act decisively in order to correct this situation? Does my friend act decisively? I guess not. But what caused his behavior? And to say that I was responsible for my behavior is simply to say that what I did was sufficiently in keeping with my thoughts, intentions, beliefs, and desires to be considered an extension of them. Judgments on responsibility depend upon the overall complexion of one's mind, not on the metaphysical or mental cause and effect. Yeah. So what does it mean to be moral creature and to act decisively and to act morally, act legally? What does it mean from a neuroscience perspective? We all know that we have to do that if we want to live peacefully, if we want to interact somehow, but interact in the way of politeness, in the way of tolerance, in the way of respect, and in the way of friendship, brotherhood, if you wish. As you can see, neuroscience perspective is completely distinguished. There is no even a place, even a dimension of tolerance and openness and open mind as well within neuroscience. Neuroscience is very specific, as you can see, research and academic approach. to mental states, to men's behavior, marriage, and language, education, thinking, whatever it may be. All right. So I also would like to sharp your intention considering the following examples of human violence. Is it worth doing? Yes, it does. If we are talking about moral responsibility, free will in neuroscience, I guess this enterprise is extremely important. This enterprise deserves this carefully analysis and research. Just because we have to understand what caused criminal actions. Suppose one man decided to kill another man because of money, because of passion, because of fame, whatever it may be, because he is a criminal. He commit. All right. So this man, he's a criminal and he commit a crime against another man or against society or against humanity. What caused his behavior? According to neuroscience, the reason is quite simple. A very specific and very complex processes within his brain. So can we blame Joseph Stalin, Adolf Hitler? Can we blame all of these people because of mass murders, persecutions, etc.? Just think and think about this topic one more time. If these people were driven by blind forces of the mind, there's no responsibility. But what does it mean, or what is to be responsible? Okay, in order to understand this topic, this I would say tension between social mind and neurobiological approach to the mind, I would like to consider the following examples of human violence. A 4-year-old boy was playing with his father's gun and killed a young woman. The gun had been kept loaded and unsecured in a dressed drawer. The second one, 12-year-old boy who had been the victim of continual physical and emotional abuse took his father's gun and intentionally shot and killed a young woman because she was teasing him. A 25-year-old man who had been the victim of continual abuse as a child intentionally shot and killed his girlfriend because she left him for another man. A 25-year-old man who had been raised by wonderful parents and never abused intentionally shot and killed a young woman he had never met, just for fun. We are familiar with such, I would say, situations. The fifth example is a 25-year-old man who had been raised by wonderful parents and never abused intentionally. He shot and killed a young woman he had never met just for fun. And so the question is, what caused his behavior? Why didn't this 25-year-old man behave properly? Why did this man kill a young woman intentionally? Just for fun, or just because of his jealous character? It's an extremely important question, in fact. All right. So another important question: if there is no free will, so what we have to do with moral responsibility? Intent features heavily and anxious about more responsibility. And the first question is, as you can see, and the first question is, did the person intend to act as she did? When exactly was the intent formed? Did she know what she could have done otherwise? Did she feel a sense of ownership of her intent? These are pivotal issues to philosophers, legal scholars, psychologists, and neurologists. In fact, a huge percentage of the research done concerning the free will debate revolves around intent, often microscopically examines the role of intent in the second before behavior happens. According to neurobiology and neuroscience, we do make a decision before 10 seconds, according to the latest data, just imagine, before at least 10 seconds, behavior happens. So can I be a moral being? Can I experience a moral responsibility given that fact? Given that fact that my mind did decide what to do before my conscious act and reaction. An extremely important idea, I would say, of neuroscience. Okay, now I would like to make a brief interpretation of that violent situations. In each case, a young woman died, and in each case, her death was a result of events arising in the brain of another human being. But the degree of moral outrage we feel depends on the background conditions described in each case. We suspect that a 4-year-old child cannot truly kill someone on purpose, and that the intentions of a 12 years old do not run as deep as those of an adult. In causes in the first and the second, we know that the brain of the killer has not fully matured, that not all the responsibilities of personhood have yet been conferred. The history of abuse and the precipitating circumstances in the case third seem to mitigate the man's guilt. This was a crime of passion committed by a person who had himself suffered at the hands of others. And fourth situation, there has been no abuse, and the motive brands the perpetrator as a psychopath. In case fifth, we can see that the same psychopathic behavior and motive, but a brain tumor somehow changed the moral calculus entirely. Given its location, it seems to divert the killer of all responsibility for his crime, for all of his crime. And it works this miracle even if the man's subjective experience was identical to that of the psychopath in case fourth. For the moment, we understand that his feelings had a physical cause, a brain tumor, and we cannot help seeing him as a victim of his own biology. As you can see, it's not easy to interpret all of these situations because there is a biological element of his behavior, there is psychological element, and there is social element, abuse, jealous, and a very specific mental disorder. All of it, and only combination of all of these, I would say, factors is, well, I guess, provides the way of right and correct interpretation of his behavior. Okay, so how can we make sense of these gradations of moral responsibility when brains and their background influences are in every case, and to exactly the same degree, the real cause of a woman's death? We need not to have any illusions that a causal agent lives within the human mind to recognize that certain people are dangerous. We know that. So what we condemn most in another person is a conscious intention to do harm. So our social brain is quite obvious in this respect. We command one another, do not do harm to another people. Behave properly. Be honest. Do not kill. Do not insult people. Do not talk behind someone's back, because it's not appropriate. It is completely, entirely inappropriate within social congregation. And that idea of conscious intention to do harm is an extremely dangerous, because we do judge people. Our legal system, world's legal system, did judge Adolf Hitler not because he was, I would say, a deaf and a blind body, but because his intention, his conscious intention to do harm to people. This is what I'm talking about. And degrees of guilt can still be judged by reference to the facts of a cause, the personality of the accused, his prior offenses, his patterns of association with others, his use of intoxicants, his confessed motives with regard to the victim, etc. If a person's actions seem to have been entirely out of character, that might influence our view of the risk he now poses to others. If the accused appears unrepentant and eager to kill again, we need entertain to not notions of free will to consider him a dangerous to society. So as you can see, we can trace here two, I would say, two wings of this problem. Intentional wing and unintentional. But the main problem here, when we are combining all of these intentions, in order to explain why this man is killing, is insulting people. The best explanation, I would say, is the following. We have to analyze, we have to find out what is going on with this man, with his brain. And the next possible scenario is to trace his social context. And only combining them, we can understand the I guess, fully understand what's going on and what's been bothering and upsetting this man, and why this man acts decisively, acts conscientiously, and acts intentionally in order to do harm to people. Okay, so making a possible solution. So what we have to do with neuroscience, free will, moral responsibility, and society. A possible reconciliation, the lack of free will and moral responsibility is the following. The moment of conscious meditation, we should then be expected to be able to veto a decision, prevent it from happening. And you can hand moral responsibility on that. The whole conviction within neuroscientists and cognitive scientists is the following. Moral responsibility is a pretty much is a pretty much intentional mean. Is a pretty much social mean. So all we have to do is to use this mean in order to prevent mass murders, killings, insultings, persecutions, whatever it may be. We have to avoid, we have to protect ourselves from intentional acts of harm. All we have to do is to do that. Okay, from a neuroscience perspective, moral responsibility is examined through the lens of brain function, cognition, and behavior. Neuroscientists study how different brain regions contribute to moral reasoning, decision-making, empathy, and impulse control. So while neuroscience complicates the idea of absolute free will, it also depends our understanding of human behavior and provides tools for a more compassionate, realistic approach to moral responsibility. And now you are set free. So thank you so much for being with me today. I guess it's extremely important to trace the latest breakthroughs in neuroscience in order to understand what is neuroscience, because we all are eyewitnesses of the rapid development of cognitive and neuroscience, especially these days. So thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Artem. I suppose we may consider a few questions in the chat box.
Okay, all right, I see it. The first one is Abdul, if neuroscientific experiments like liberty, shows that neural activity precedes consciousness, it means to what extent can we still claim agency of our action? Well, it's a very tough question, in fact, because neuroscience, as well, as you can see, denies the fact of free agent. This is the problem. So an activity, the problem here is, I guess, in the field of interpretation. Can we interpret this idea like Libet's experiment in the light of social context? To a great extent, but not fully. This is what I'm convinced that we cannot fully, appeal to neuroscience, given that fact that we live in a social dimension. This is the problem, and there is no obvious, as you can see, directions. I would say there is no obvious connections and relations between all of these matters, I would say. We used to think that we are free agent, but nothing of this can be true from a neuroscience perspective, as you can see. But we have to reconcile somehow this idea with social order we live in. The next question is, if moral responsibility requires the capacity to choose otherwise, how can that be defended in light of evidence that our brain may operate on fixed neural patterns? Of course, the capacity to choose otherwise. Neuroscience, in many ways, is about biological, chemical, and electrical, I would say, relations, but relations isn't sufficient, isn't appropriate word. I would say interdependency. Yes, interdependency of our neurons. but the moral responsibility is something beyond this context, I would say. Once again, I assume, and my presupposition here is quite obvious. We can judge ourselves from moral perspective, from religious perspective, from from social perspective, from social interactionism, but there is no mean of social analysis using neurons. This is the problem. Yes, we are beings, we are created beings, we are social beings, but it is hardly enough to define a man using only neurons. Yes, neurons operates us, but I would say not fully as we can see as it may seem. Paulina, neuroscience is increasingly demonstrates the influence of genetic, environmental, yes, neurological factors to behavior. And at what point does moral responsibility shift from the individual to the external determinants? In many ways, in fact, in many ways. But the problem here is obvious. Moral responsibility is phrased as social a mean of social interaction. This is the problem. We cannot reconcile, especially these days, an idea of social interactionism or social mind or social operationism with an idea of moral responsibility of neuroscience. This is the problem. Can we meaningfully discuss justice and punishment without invoking the concept of free will? No way. Free will, okay, legal law and so our legal system is supposed to exercise free will. Without free will, there's no, I would say, punishment and reward without free will, because our culture is based on this very idea of free will. If you are free, you can do, you can commit crime, you can do everything. But if there is no free will, there is no law and there is no punishment, I would say. That's not the point. That's not the whole point, I would say. But anyway, there is no. I would like to continue and to emphasize this idea. There is no clear evidence. There is no fully emphasized evidence between free will and neurons. I can do many things, but from conscious and unconscious perspective. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for answering. I hope this answer will be beneficial for our participant. Yeah, before I close this event for our participant, please open your camera. I will take a picture on the count of 3 for documentation. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, another 1, 1, 2, 3. Thank you for your cooperation. Yeah, finally, we come to the end of visiting lecture today. We would like to thank you for Mr. Artem for the wonderful information and sharing your knowledge. We hope this information will be beneficial for all participants. At least we hope to have collaboration in the future with Oles Honchar Dnipro National University, Ukraine. The visiting lecture for today and here. We hope to see you soon. Thank you and have a nice day. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much for your hospitality and encouragement and for your questions. And yes, you are right. This topic is extremely tough, and we have to clarify all of these points in many ways and in many respects. There was no easy and understandable answers to all of these matters, just because the mind, the brain is an extremely complicated I would say. Anyway, thank you so much for being with me. And this lecture is an attempt, is a humble attempt to show what is neuroscience. And thank you so much for being with me today. Thank you for this option to take part in this enterprise.
Thank you.